Hi, I'm Jared Looney with Global City Mission, and this is Evangelism in a Post Everything Society. This is a workshop that we've shared at mission conferences in the past, and we hope that it's a helpful resource for you as you reach out to a changing world around you in your city and in your community. One of the fastest growing religious demographics in the United States are the unaffiliated or non religious. If you ask someone, what is your religion? They might say none or nothing or just no religion. This number is approximately now one third of the United States population. So it's been rapidly growing. And at the same time, we've seen church attendance numbers regularly declining. And while all this is happening, and it all may seem to be, pretty negative to us in the church, at the same time, it doesn't mean that everyone's walking away to wholesale atheism. Sure, some of that's happening, but a lot of people, if you ask them what about their more about their religious perspective, you try to get into kind of what's going on in their life. A lot of people identify as I'm spiritual but not religious, and whatever we think of that statement, it means something to the people saying it, and more than half. Will identify this way. And people may be pulling in from all kinds of different resources or all kinds of different sources in terms of what their worldview is in terms of spirituality. And it may not all be Christian per se either in terms of the influence. But people are interested in the transcendent, in something that's out there, and things that will enrich their life. And so there are opportunities to continue to talk about Jesus with people. So when we talk about a post everything society, in the halls of seminaries over the last few decades, especially 20, 30 years ago, that the whole framework or paradigm of postmodernism was really talked about a lot, and at the same time, post Christendom, in terms of a shift in our societies taking place in the West, has been discussed a lot, and in the majority world the realities of post-colonialism are a pretty hot topic in theological circles, and so we really are living through a lot of change, and it's post this and post that, post fill in the blank, post everything. And when we're talking specifically about reaching out evangelistically to our communities, we've encountered in our team all kinds of combinations of people that have shifted and moved in terms of their faith and belief and spiritual perspective. There's people that are post-Christian and someone who actually did grow up in Christian faith and a Christian household, Christian influence, and they've really kind of stepped away from that. And it might still have some influence on their worldview, but they've stepped away from it in terms of living that life. There's also people that maybe were never that devoted to Christian faith, but they definitely were products of a Christendom society. And you can define Christendom as not as a Christian society per se, because I would argue not everything was Christian in our society or in other societies that have a strong Christian presence in them. However, the idea of Christendom, a cultural Christendom, is that Christianity has the home field advantage in terms of the marketplace of ideas and in terms of influence in that society. And so we're now entering a time where it really seems that we're stepping into a time that could be considered post-Christendom, in which that home field advantage is definitely diminished. There's also people that are post-Islamic, and so they were Muslim, but now maybe they're agnostic or they're just secularized. And we've met people that grew up in a Muslim setting that are now Buddhist and all kinds of things like that. There's people that are post-atheist. What I've experienced the most is folks that kind of move from atheism to maybe agnosticism. They go from I'm definitely sure there's nothing else to I don't know what else there might be. I've also had Bible studies with people and baptized people that were atheist, and then on their way to Christian faith, they tried out Buddhism, and because they moved from a there is no God to kind of a non-theistic spirituality, and so they moved towards Buddhism, kind of looking for something, and that seemed like a logical next step. There's people that are into New Age mysticism, and they just kind of pull from all sorts of different sources and different ideas, and this seems to be something that a lot of people really have connected with. It's kind of anti-establishment in some ways in terms of coming off of Christendom, and so that has a certain appeal to it to people. And there's a lot of people that are just secularized from Hindu backgrounds, Muslim backgrounds, Christian backgrounds, people that are really just part of our secular culture. And they're really not actively pursuing any kind of religious faith, and they just kind of live for the now and for the material. And it's just, and it's, just really focused on a more of a secular kind of life. That's certainly true in our American context and a lot of Western context, as well as some very predominant, places in East Asia. And then again, just folks that just say I'm spiritual but not religious, and this means all kinds of things. And so it's helpful to listen to what it means to the person saying it. And a lot of times it seems that people are pulling from different sources where it may be a little bit just from popular culture and some spirituality that comes from there, and from maybe some new age stuff, maybe something that is inherently Christian or from a particular denomination, maybe something else is a little bit Buddhist. And so people may be kind of piecemealing a spirituality together and kind of a patchwork of ideas and practices. And that's not always conscious that people are doing that. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But people that just would kind of say I'm spiritual, not religious. Again, this can mean a lot of different things. So we want to listen to people in terms of what it actually is with this individual that we're talking to. And there's all kinds of other movements and shifts and motions that are taking place in the religious landscape that just represent this post everything reality. So when we talk about evangelism in a post-everything society, we want to begin by rethinking our assumptions. And the first question there is, what do words mean? And we're not trying to be, kind of sarcastic there. What we're really saying is, when we say some of the things we say as Christians, do they mean the same thing to other people who hear those words? So, for example, one of the guys on our team was talking to someone from a Muslim background who was new to the United States. Had come from a Middle Eastern country that's almost entirely Muslim, with no separation of church and state, if you will, religion and state. And he said to him, "Oh, I'm a Christian." And his Muslim friend said, "Well, you're saying you're an immoral person." And of course, he's shocked and says, "What do you mean by that?" He says, "Well, Americans are immoral, and Americans are Christians, so Christians are immoral people." The logic made sense to him. But also, when we say Christian, does that mean to someone I have to become a member of a certain political party, or things like that? That as we've kind of built a culture around faith in a way that maybe kind of an add-on that doesn't necessarily mean what we think it means when we say Christian to other people. I had somebody that was in one of our house churches that we had planted, and he was talking to someone. He was taking some college classes, talking to a young guy in his college classes, and he said to him, said, "Hey, they got into a faith conversation." He said to him, "Why don't you come to church with me sometime?" And the guy said, "Oh no, I don't want to have anything to do with church." And then he caught himself and he said, "Well, let me explain." And we were doing house church, and he began telling him, it's discussion, and we share a meal, and we kind of sit together in a living room. And the guy goes, "Oh, well, I'm not ready to do something with God or faith or anything like that. But if I was, I would give that a try." Now, the point here is that people have all kinds of assumptions about what church is. And so they may really connect with whatever it is we're doing, whatever style of church, whatever approach we're taking. They may really connect with it. Um, but we just are assuming what they hear when we say the word church. They may have a really positive experience with it in the past. They might have had a really negative experience, maybe neutral, or they may just have a picture of church that is completely different than what we would be inviting them to connect with. And so what does this word mean? And so with some of the terms that we use, what I really advise people to do is just describe these things. Try to be as descriptive as you can. When I say I'm a Christian, I say instead I'm a follower of Jesus. When I talk about church, I just describe what this gathering looks like to people. And then if it resonates with them, if it's something that connects with them, well, then we can begin to kind of give words to that description. We can start to fill in that meaning. If it's something that resonates with them, then it's something we can lean into more and go a little bit deeper and maybe invite them to come experience it. And so um, rather than just use words where we assume that we're on the same page in terms of the meaning, what we want to do is rethink our assumptions and ask, what do these words mean to other people? What has their experience been? And so instead, what we try to do is start out, we try to lead with just describing this gathering, describing something, whatever we're talking about. And then if that description resonates with them, then that's something we can lean into. We need to ask whose religious experience. I still remember we had this gathering, and we had planted house churches. We had about 3 house churches gathered together for Easter in a larger home, and we were sitting in the room together, and so we were trying to make it kind of a celebration emphasis for for Easter. Easter we believe should be celebrated, and so for that day we've done different things. But for that day we started out with teaching first, and then we moved from teaching to praise and worship, kind of a Thanksgiving and praise time for what we just heard about, and then we'd move to a shared meal together. And during the praise, we were entering into the time of worship, of singing. We all kind of stood up, and what I noticed happened was the group was about half and half. So it's about half people that had a church background and about half people that had no church background. So what happened was we stood up to sing, and all the people that had a church background, stood up, they got in a circle, they're closing their eyes, they're lifting their voices, they're lifting their hands, they're really into it. And all the people that had no church background kind of moved their chairs back just to kind of politely, leave room for everybody. And they sat down and they just kind of waited respectfully, politely, and they listened. It just wasn't their religious experience. And so that doesn't mean that it's bad or good or anything like that. Doesn't mean they can't appreciate it or get involved in it, depending on whatever experience we're talking about. But we just have to understand that a lot of us that grew up in church, have been around it for a long time, we don't realize that this experience may be foreign to other people. And so, whose religious experience are we talking about? And can we build bridges, or can we even take things that are from their background and say, hey, the gospel could fill this? And that's something that takes place a lot in missions. We take something within people's culture, and if it's not something that's unbiblical, is this something the gospel can be infused into, as well as inviting people to experience some of what maybe we already appreciate. Um, but we need to ask whose religious experience. And so that's again checking our assumptions that the things that we do will automatically connect. We need to ask where is safe. We take for granted, I think, those of us that have been around church all our life, or at least for a long time, we take for granted that entering into a church space, especially if it's like a building and a sanctuary and all those kind of things, that entering into a church space feels safe to people. We take that for granted, and not everyone feels that way. Think about any social situation that would be brand new to you, something maybe outside of your comfort zone. I mean, how do you feel? Is someone going to embarrass you? You might wonder, am I going to stick out? Will I know what to do? Will I look foolish? I mean, you're asking some of those kind of questions because you don't know. There's a church that we know that we did some training for and stuff, and they do this adopt a neighborhood thing where they have a shared meal and they invite people from the community. Um, and what they did was they set up the tables. They have rooms they could do this in, but they set up the tables for the meal together right in the lobby at the front of the church. So right there is the glass doors. They open them up, and the tables and the meal is right there in the lobby. So people don't have to have the courage to venture into the inner sanctum, if you will. They don't have to go deep into they come into the lobby. There's the tables right there, there's a meal, everyone can see it, the doors are glass, the doors are open. And again, it's really about building trust. And it might sound silly, why can't they just come in? And well, this is a new experience, and they don't know what they're getting into, and they don't know if they can trust the people there, and they don't know what's about to happen, and they don't know if they're going to be put on the spot. And it's just made very accessible, very safe. for people, and because we're trying to build trust in this community. And how do we connect? Do we connect with people where they are? Are we willing to enter into the spaces they're already comfortable with? Connect with people where they're at. How do we connect with them? Are we building relationships? Or are we expecting people just to kind of get what we're doing with no explanation? How are we connecting with people? We need to rethink our assumptions. What do the words we say mean? Um, does our religious experience automatically connect with other people as they're made in the image of God, or the things they're doing where we might be able to infuse the gospel into those things as well? Are we creating safe space? Are we meeting people maybe where they're at, and in places they already consider safe because it's their spaces? How do we connect? Is it things that they really need and appreciate and resonates with them, or are we just assuming what a community needs? And are we meeting people where they are? How do we connect with others? We need to rethink some of our assumptions in a post everything society. So, some key things just for individuals to keep in mind. One is let's pray. Let's pray for people. Pray for people by name. Pray for God to put new people in your path. Pray for the places we go. Pray for things we invite people to. Let's be people of prayer, because ultimately this is about the Spirit moving in people and God cultivating hearts. But when we pray, let's be attentive. We pray, and then do we expect anything to happen? Let's pray and let's pay attention to how God is at work so that we can join him in that work. Let's go where people are. Let's go where people already are and connect with them in their spaces. Let's go hang out with people. Let's go be where people are. And so that's really key, that we're not just expecting people to come to us. It's not a build it and they will come scenario. In many cases, we need to be able to mobilize our churches, mobilize members, mobilize ourselves, and be where people are. We need to check our assumptions. We just talked about that some, because it's not automatic that everyone just thinks like us, and everyone has had the same experiences with us as us. I know for me, when I started in ministry, I had pretty positive experiences with church, a good part of my life, and then I started meeting a lot of people where that was not the case, and again, I had to check my assumptions. Um, we need to discover receptivity. One of the things that we talk about in some of the evangelism training that we offer, and that we do for churches and for people in Global City Mission, is we really encourage people to move away from the idea of just trying to win the argument, win the debate. Instead, we need to discover people that are receptive to engage the conversation. We're not even saying receptive to conversion right away, but receptive to engage the conversation. And so sometimes it seems like maybe we're more eager to win the argument than win the person. And so really we need to find who are the people. Let's find the people in my life that are receptive to engage the conversation, and that's who we can enter in with, and walk along with them, and really engage the gospel of Christ, rather than trying to win. And again, if you know someone well, and like debate and argument is just kind of how they reason, how they talk, well, yeah, then have those conversations. But we're kind of talking about a posture that's just trying to win the argument, win the debate. We need to move away from that and just seek people where God is working on them, is cultivating, their hearts, and people that are receptive to engage the conversation. We need to avoid bait and switch. People know if we're really trying to set them up for the kind of evangelistic pitch later. People sniff that out. And so we want to be really upfront. We don't want to be obnoxious about it. And again, we train on some ways to do this in conversation, but we want to connect with people in a way that lets them know we're people of faith, but also without making them run. And so we want to have the opportunity to have multiple conversations. We want to connect people where they are. And we don't want to do it through setting up a bait and switch. We want to be relational. This is about relationship. We want to build relationship with people. We want to enter into ongoing conversations. We're entering into evangelistic friendships, essentially. We want to learn to listen well. Every culture, every subculture, every community we encounter, there are going to be people that are open to engage the gospel. Now, they may be in some communities, they may be many, and others, they may be few, but there are people there. God will have people there. And we want to learn to listen well, because as we engage with people, every community, every culture, every subculture has bridges to the gospel and barriers to the gospel. And so we want to listen well so we can identify those bridges and that we can understand how to build bridges with people, and how to bridge the gospel into their life, and engage them in a way that makes sense. And so we want to listen well, so we understand their concerns, we understand some of the connection points for the gospel for them personally. So a lot of this is kind of different ways individuals can interact in this world as we live out as witnesses of Christ, pursuing the Great Commission in our circles of influence in our own communities. But what about the church? What about the church corporately? So here's a few things just to think about. One is that events are helpful. They may be really helpful, but relationships are central. And so a couple of key things to remember: if you're doing an evangelistic event and you need to have people, their sole purpose is to make new friends, and what is the opportunity following that event? Is the event the whole thing, or is there a way to continue that conversation with people, whether that's through more organic relationships, or whether that's something more formal that is set up, that, hey, here's a next step people can take. What happens after that event? But at events, I've seen churches where, man, they really get that machine running and they have all the volunteers plugged in, but there needs to be people. There needs to be people whose whole job is simply to walk around and make friends. Relationships is the task. That's what they need. That's what they're about. And because events need to be about building relationship and connecting with people so that we can enter into a friendship that continues. We need to equip churches to be hospitable spaces. We kind of said it earlier. I think sometimes we take for granted, we don't understand how intimidating it can be to come into a church as an outsider. So we really need to put on a different set of eyes. What is this experience for people that aren't already part of this? We need to learn how to hang out with lost people. Some of this is that church people just need to learn how to hang out again, and just hang out with people that aren't like us, and be comfortable with people that aren't like us, and people who think differently. We need to hang out, the art of hanging out, and just be with lost people. And some of this means that the people that are, man, they do like 5 different things in church. Get that down to 2 or 3 and create some space to go be with people outside of church so that we can have that evangelistic presence in our communities, and get some other people to step up in the church to cover some of those areas. So everyone has maybe a couple things they're doing instead of 5 or 10. Instead of 5 or 10, we're out in the community being with people. And we want to plant faith communities where people are. This might be, a church plant. This might be small groups that are more missional in focus, more outreach driven. But we want to start communities of faith where people already are, because there's a lot of people out there that are not ready to just walk through the doors of our, kind of established, church context. And so we want to start faith communities. We want to start micro churches, start small groups, start house churches, whatever it is, a men's fellowship, women's fellowship, maybe take it outside of the fellowship hall even, And so what can we do to start faith communities where people already are, so we can encounter them and be able to invite people into spaces that feel safe to them? And then those can be bridges to our main church body, for people as well. But most importantly, these are bridges to Jesus. So we want to plant faith communities where people already are. So we have a couple of equipping opportunities we just want to let you know about, in case it's something that anyone would be interested in. And we hope that what we're sharing is helpful for engaging your community regardless. But here's a couple of opportunities that you may want to pursue. So one is Disciple Maker Cohorts. This is an online platform that we do. It's 7 sessions over about twice that many weeks, because we do it every other week. And the every other week is to create space, to create the time and the capacity for people to put this into practice, put what they're learning into practice during a couple of weeks between sessions. And so these meet every other week over 7 sessions. They're 90 minutes each. The first 4 sessions is on healthy conversational evangelism. And the last 3 sessions is on starting a discovery group or an outreach-oriented small group in your own community. And then the other thing we do is we do evangelism workshops on healthy conversational evangelism, on life evangelism in local churches. And so this is something where we want to help local churches as a mission organization. We realize that we're constantly learning, and we've learned a lot from regularly reaching out to people across the experiences of our team. And we want to take what we've learned and equip members in local churches to reach out and be mobilized to connect and impact their own communities. And so this is a 3-hour workshop. And so again, if you're in church leadership and you want to hear more about that, we'd be happy to spend some time visiting with you about it. So again, you can reach out to us at info@globalcitymission.org or go to our website at globalcitymission.org. And also you can follow us on Instagram at GCMI Go. And we would love to connect and to just encourage each other in the Lord as we all reach out and live the Great Commission in our communities, in our cities, and navigate a ever-changing culture. Change is a constant, and we're living out ministry now in a post everything society, but the Great Commission has not changed. Thanks so much.